Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learning. I'm delighted to be joined today by Ian Preston, the Group CEO of Preston Baker. Ian, thank you very much for joining me today. It's a real honour. I've been following you a long time and see how well that you've been doing throughout the years in the industry. Numerous accolades, numerous well-deserved awards, and very highly regarded. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Real pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So just give us a flavour how you got into agency, because I know we're going to come on to how you've pivoted and how you see the future in agency. And you made an interesting statement before we started, which I think I've heard quite a few times from John McGrath in Australia. What got me here won't get me there. So we'll move on to that. But what did get you into agency?
The same thing as everyone else, an accident. no decision whatsoever. So I was at university in Leeds for 1 year, and I was an immature young man, and I spent my time drinking and not going to the lectures that I was supposed to, and I bombed out. I got a summer job at an estate agent called Keith Pattinson's, which is now run by the wonderful Caroline Pattinson, over the summer when I lived in Newcastle. And as they say, the rest is history. I probably spent about 9 months working for KPs, and then I moved over to Countrywide in May 2000. And I then had a corporate career through Countrywide, starting as a negotiator, becoming a branch manager roughly 2003. And so I was 21 when I became a BM, which is, I think, quite young for today's world. I think actually 20 years ago, that was more common than maybe it would be now. I then became a regional manager when Countrywide acquired the Bradford and Bingley Group. They decided that they would take a punt on a 24-year-old, relocating to Yorkshire and trying to turn around, at that point, the worst performing segment of the Countrywide business. So we, as a business, I took over 6 offices and we were losing £600,000 in 2004. So the market wasn't bad. It was just an amalgamation of some poorly performing Countrywide offices and some poorly performing Bradford and Bingley offices merged together. And that was the group which I took over. And I spent 3 to 4 years. Sorry, you had a question?
No, keep going.
So I spent 3 to 4 years doing that. And then we got to 2007, 2008 through the big financial crash. And Mark Christopher, a chap I'm still working with today, who was my managing director at that stage, sort of called me, and I'd just been off on honeymoon. And so I'd arrived back from honeymoon, and prior to going on honeymoon, I submitted a plan to Mark for the rationalisation of the branches. So by that point, I was looking after 10 offices, and I made a proposal to close some, lose a number of really valued colleagues through a redundancy process, and restructure the business to keep it a lower cost base, which was more commensurate with how revenues have changed. And for those people who may be younger, like we went from selling, if you imagine, if you were selling 10 houses a week in 2007, you were selling 2 houses a week in 2008, an 80% reduction in volume like that overnight. And so anyone who's been through COVID or anything like that, the results were much more dramatic during the financial crisis. People couldn't get mortgages. And so I put this proposal forward. Mark invited me into a meeting. He had his PA there, which is always a flag to anyone. If there's a witness for a meeting, it's probably not great news. And they basically said to me that they'd looked at my plan and that they wanted to shut the York office as well. They wanted to add that in. And I was like, okay, well, I think the York office, we've just restructured. So I think you're looking at historic data. You're not looking at the current position, because I've just moved premises and I've stripped out loads of cost. So I know it's got lots of historic losses, but we could do something with this. And they're like, okay, well, we'll take it away and think about it. Came back, said, no, decision's made at board level. York is shutting. And I said, well, in which case, I'd like to resign and I'd like to go and run it as an independent franchise. So I'll work as part of Countrywide, but I want to quit and do it. If you keep it open, I'll stay. I'll execute the plan I put forward. But if you're gonna shut it, then that's it. I want to leave and run it as an independent franchise, which is what happened. And so James Baker, my cousin, Sarah Jane, who I know has been on your show, they came with me, and we had 4 people who went over from the old Countrywide to what was then Bearstow-Eves. So we changed the brand from Renton's Countrywide to Bearstow-Eves, and we set up a franchise. And that was 2008. 2009, we opened in Selby, so we opened an office there. 2010, we bought another franchisee out, which was based over in Leeds. So we bought 2 of their offices. And then Hunters bought the countrywide franchising business, which of course they'd already sold the master franchise for Leeds. They had a York office, which was their HQ. They had a Selby office, and we bought additional franchise rights from them as well. So we bought franchises in locations we haven't even opened. And we sat down with the Hunters guys, and they were very fair. I mean, I have to say, it was a really unpleasant process, because we'd spent all this time and money building the Bear Swedes brand in these areas, but we basically had to buy ourselves out of these contracts. So we paid tens of thousands of pounds for the right to leave, because we were basically going to be sold on as an asset. We were the top performing franchise in the UK, and we were an asset to them, which they bought. And so we had to ship it. Anyway, I feel like I've spoken now 5 minutes. So, any questions? Or
how did Preston Baker come about then? So, where did the name? Obviously, it came from there.
Yes, the unbelievably imaginative branding expert, which was James Baker and Ian Preston. So James is my first cousin. So we're 6 months apart in age. We grew up together. I went into agency first. He came into agency second. And yeah, that was it. But we had 1 month basically to create a brand, rebrand, launch a website, the whole thing, from leaving what was then Bear Swedes to then setting up as Preston Baker.
Okay, so how did you manage to do that, and how did you manage to build that award-winning brand? And I notice over the decade that you've got some core values, which are ACE.
Yep.
We've now gone to PACE.
That's right.
Tell us about those core values then.
Yeah, so ACE, which is the starting point of this, is really a description of the people that I love to work with. So attitude, fundamentally, I'm a can-do, optimistic, positive kind of person. And whilst I absolutely do not want to surround myself with yes people who just agree with me, and at times I think I've fallen into that trap, and that's definitely, if you're looking at lessons learned, you must own, like whenever something doesn't go as you envisage as a leader, I believe that you should publicly criticize yourself and your decision to your management team, because that gives permission. That says it's okay to own mistakes. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay as long as you put your hands up and you say, yeah, I made that mistake. I thought this was going to be the outcome. I was wrong. This is the lesson I've learned. And so I think that is a really, really important thing that I learned probably a bit too late, is it's not weakness, it's strength. And so I want positive people who are solutions orientated. So I'm not really interested, if I'm honest with you, about having a long description of all the problems we face, rather an acknowledgement of the problem and a solution. That's what I mean by attitude. Community. I've worked with loads of individual salespeople who were top class, but they were arseholes and they pissed everyone off around them. So they're not
out there.
but that's not. So community is a description of how we want to be to the outside public, but it's also, more importantly, in my opinion, it's about the culture within the business, is that we don't want the talented arsehole. We want people who are team players. And then finally, energy. I am a high energy guy who works hard, and I expect those people around me to work hard. That's the price of entry. So the price of entry, the ticket to get on the bus, is hard work and a positive attitude. And if you've got those two things, it's down to us to spot the talent and put that talent into the right box, and provide you the training and the mentoring and all that sort of stuff. But hard work and attitude are really core values which we have or we don't have as individuals. Then the P got added on the end because one of the business principles that we have is premium. And premium speaks to the fact that we're not a discounter. We're not a firm which is going to chip our fee. We're not a firm which is going to charge less than the competition. We'll always charge more. And we'll always then try and challenge ourselves how we can create more value for the consumer to justify that fee. So that's a core principle of any business which I want to be in. It's got to be that we're charging a premium fee for delivering a premium result, because in my judgment, consumers need that. They need better service, better outcomes. And if we go down the other path, which is we're going to do value, and I have tried that before. So again, it's not that I've never done that, but very simple. If you're currently charging 1% and your profit margin is 10%, and you add 10% to your prices, so you go to 1.1%, you increase your margin by 100%. So you go from a 10% margin to a 20% margin. You double your profits. And people think that if you're operating, let's say, a 10% margin, you cut your fees to 0.9% to win the extra instruction, then you have no margin. It has gone. And you never generate as many new customers as you think by discounting, and you never lose as many customers as you think you're going to lose by holding firm on your fee. So that's where the premium comes from.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. So for agents listening and watching this, what sort of things should they be doing to add value to get that? So for me, I firmly believe that every estate agent is worth, well, I believe 2% plus that. I know there'll be a lot of agents watching this shaking their head, thinking, we're lucky to get 0.75 or 1%. But come to me for training, or come to Ian for training, as to to demonstrate why you're worth the 2%. But what can agents watching this that are getting the 0.75 for ones that want to increase their margin, which I'm sure there's every single person watching this that does, what are the tips that you can help them to do to add value?
Well, the first thing is that the fee problem is in your head rather than the consumers. Like, that's it. So in other words, if you simply asked and you did nothing different, you'd be amazed by the results. So that's step one, is just have the confidence that you're going to, that you can deliver that. One of the most effective things we've done on fees is we've actually changed the point at which we measure them. So if I asked you what your average fee was, and I asked you as a pound note, you'd probably explain to me what it is on completion. Yeah. So one of the ways which we've changed our business model quite significantly in a estate agency is we now give consumers the choice, so it's a choice, to be able to pay something or everything up front if they wish to. And so we now measure our average fee on listing. So what is our average revenue? So our total revenue divided by the number of listings that we have. And in the last 2 years, we've grown our revenue per listing by 20%. So we make 20% more per listing now than we did 2 years ago. And that's been transformational for the business for a variety of reasons, not least of which because we've moved to a self-employed model. So offering the agents the opportunity to earn on listing rather than on completion gives us a much better ability to get people up to speed on a self-employed basis than on an employed basis. So how does that work? So the first thing I would be counselling someone to do is I would counsel you to put your fees up by 20%. So let's just keep it at 1% for the sake of argument, which is probably about the average of what people are charging. So immediately move your no sale, no fee to 1.2%. Now, for someone paying £295 up front, which might not be the right figure, it's the figure that we use, including VAT, you get 20% off your fee. So straight away, if you pay £295 up front, you're back to 1%. So now you get £295 plus 1%. And what we do is we've got technology powered by our software product where all the fee scale is set in the CRM. And there's a slider which you can drag along, and you can pay everything up front, which discounts it by a further 20%. So effectively, if someone paid everything up front, they'd be paying 0.8%. So this immediately gives you somewhere to go when you're discussing your fees with the consumer. And what you will find is that in our world, 20% of people pick no sale, no fee, 20% of people pay everything up front, and 60% pay something up front. And so now our average revenue, which we're taking up front, is £800 per listing as an average, plus VAT. And our average fee on completion is £3,700 plus VAT, and that's an average capital value of 330k. So our blended fee, so if you measured it on completion, we're now getting a £5,000 plus VAT fee on completion, or a £2,500 fee on listing, depending on where you measure it. So that would be a really simple tactic. And we've put this now into 2 agencies who haven't got the technology which we use, which is basically our own CRM, which we're launching. Well, it's launched last week, which is called Greenhouse OS. But we put this into 2 agencies with like a spreadsheet. And one of the agencies, in their first month in January, secured £15,000 of upfront fees from a single office branch, not listing huge volumes, but 15k in upfront fees plus their normal completion fees. So that's
fantastic. Really, really interesting. So let's talk about high skill, high tech.
Sure.
Okay. So what do you mean by it?
So I guess, so high skill, high tech is the philosophy of how we've developed new businesses and how we've developed existing businesses within the Preston Baker Group. And fundamentally, it starts from an early assessment of the market, which is how we see things. So I think now estate agents are experiencing high fixed costs in a market which goes up and down really rapidly, so high volatility. And you've got rising labour costs. So if you think about minimum wage now, minimum wage is £24,000 per annum.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to the quality of team members that you can attract for 24, 25, 26, 27, 28K? And I would argue you're now competing with much, much less demanding jobs than you were 7 years ago. So when people talk about the quality of staff available in agency and how it's falling, it's actually because the price point, the relative price point of what we're paying people is getting closer and closer to minimum wage. And I think that's the core challenge which we face. And so therefore, you need to pay people more if you want the top quality people. You have to pay more. We're also working in a relatively low margin environment as well. So it's relatively low profitability. So if you've got low profit, high volatility, rising cost of labour, like that's a big problem. I think it's a strategic issue for our industry. So if you accept you need to pay people more to get the top quality talent, then you have to be able to operate with the same level of service, but with fewer people. Yeah. And that's where the tech comes in. So high skill says, we've got to pay more money to have the best people. And high tech says we need to facilitate that by the removal of repetitive tasks from our business using technology. And so I look very carefully at how much revenue and how much profit we generate per full-time employee that we have. So to give you a couple of stats on this, in 2021, we operated with 110 FTE as a business. We now operate with 28. And we have another 25 who are self-employed. So roughly half the number of people. And last year we turned over more than we did in 2021. And that's what high skill, high tech means.
Okay. So you obviously made a strategic decision to pivot. Where did that come from?
Just the realization that what I was doing wasn't working. I pursued a different strategy post-COVID, which was, I need more people, I need more people, I need more people. And actually, despite the market being really busy and doing really well, that masked the inefficiency in our business. It just masked it. And then suddenly the market changed for us. Summer of 22 was like, suddenly things weren't quite as hot as they were in 21 and the first half of 22. And suddenly the whole thing just started to look like, oh my God, I'm running with a cost base now of, at that point, 450 grand a month. And it was like, this is turning really quick. We also made a decision that we wanted to invest in a business called Richard Roberts, which is a land promotion business. And because because it is a high skill, high tech business, which we started piloting in 2020. And that business, when done correctly, can have a 50 to 60% net profit margin. So, this year we should turn over about 2.4 million and we should make 1.2 million of profit. Now, I don't know many agency businesses which are going to be able to deliver that level of profitability, but you've got to plow. I've had to plow millions in to get it to that point. And again, I could talk about land promotion if you wanted to, but it's not necessarily relevant to every agency out there. So we were pursuing that. And so we made the decision that we would sell lettings to fund that business. So we sold lettings, which then further compounded this challenge of, oh my God, we've got this huge fixed cost base. I'm operating with loads of people. We've lost the recurring revenue of lettings for a strategic choice that we've made, which will either turn out to be the biggest act of financial self-harm that I've ever done, or alternatively, this sort of masterstroke where we pivoted and we suddenly created this fantastic land promotion business off the back of it. So we started then re-looking at the idea of how we could get more variability into our cost base. So how can we change from fixed cost to variable cost, leaning into high skill, high tech, automation, AI started to emerge. And then suddenly the opportunities with AI were like, oh my God, like we can do so much with this. So that's where we started in 2020, building our own CRM. And That was 3 and a bit years worth of work. And then summer last year, we made the decision to commercialize it.
Okay, so what is Greenhouse then?
So Greenhouse is built on the Salesforce platform, which is a $300 billion company, if you haven't heard of it. So it is absolutely massive. People are talking about how big CoStar is, the owner of On the Market. They're 30 billion. This is 10x. They are a giant. And basically, if you go to Heathrow Airport, they're powered by Salesforce. The McLaren F1 team, powered by Salesforce. Santander Bank, powered by Salesforce. Preston Baker, powered by Salesforce. So you put yourself in an elite enterprise level piece of software. But the problem with Salesforce is it's really expensive to implement into a business because you need custom Salesforce developers to make it work. So what we've been doing is we've been making it so that all of this stuff just works out of the box for estate and letting agents. And we've limited ourselves to 12 clients in our first year. And we're pretty much there now in terms of the sort of this year's customers. And yeah, it's a really interesting product. But effectively, its principle is that the answer is never no. So with a CRM, it will never quite operate exactly the way you want it to. There are compromises because it's one software product which is deployed across loads of different companies. Whereas the difference with Salesforce is that your CRM is unique to you. And all we do is we put a version in which you can then tweak and customize. So the sorts of agents that we're bringing on are sort of, the sort of award-winning, independent type agencies who are like, no, we've got a really clear vision of how we want our business to run. I'd like to give you an example, I guess, of what does it do? So we have AI prospecting. So we monitor all of the instructions within your area. We change the status for lettings and sales, and we match up the people that you already know. And then we use AI to start conversations with those people in real time, both the first message and the subsequent messages, looking to close for phone calls. So we're trying to eliminate a lot of what you might have a traditional negotiator doing within your business. We operate a self-service system for all leads which come in, which again, 40% of all viewings are booked directly without human interaction. So we're stripping out loads of the tasks which the consumer doesn't necessarily want to interact with a human being on, which a computer can do even more effectively.
Okay, so I know you're talking at an event in a couple of weeks in Leeds.
That's right.
For the ICG event. So do you want to share a little bit about what you're going to be talking about then?
Yeah, so
without giving it all away.
Well, as you could probably tell, there's quite a lot to this. We could talk about land promotion, we could talk about self-employed agency, we could talk about AI and technology. And the ICG are very kindly given us a platform for me to talk for about 45 minutes on some of those topics, effectively around this high-skill, high-tech manifesto, how we've implemented it at Preston Baker and in the other businesses which we operate in, and critically, how other estate agents can implement some of these features into their business if they want to, and how they might be able to think about the strategy of their own business, about how they could adopt something akin to a high-skill, high-tech philosophy. And so I'll be doing a sort of talk at Elland Road on the 2nd of May. And it's a free event sponsored by the ICG. So there'll be other suppliers and people talking. Ben Sellers will be talking from Starbury, again about AI. So hopefully it's going to be a really good event. And I will try and structure my thoughts in a more coherent way than I've done today for you, Stephen.
Thank you. So a couple of words that you mentioned there, action and implementation. So you're obviously an action taker and an implementer. There's a lot of people out there that really struggle to action and then implement stuff. What tips can you give to them about just starting?
So the first thing, it fundamentally is quite simple. So the first thing is that every Monday morning, the first thing I do is I read my goals of what I'm trying to achieve. And I use Pete Wilkinson's 1-3-5 strategy, where I have a vision, 3 core objectives, and then 5 goals which sit under each core objective. So effectively, I work to 15 goals at any point in time. And for each one of those goals, I create 3 things to do every week, which means I end up with a list of 45 very important things to do. And therefore, the action that I'm going to take this week is orientated around what I've decided is important. So the first thing to do if you want to take action is work out what it is you're your priority is. What is your priority? And then the habit that I really try and drill into anyone who works with us is on a Monday morning. It doesn't need to be Monday, it might be Sunday night, whatever works for you. But at the beginning of your working week, you lock in and you reconnect with your goals, you reconnect with your purpose. You don't read your emails, none of that. Just focus on being proactive. So one of the reasons why I don't particularly react to email particularly quickly is because that is someone else's problem. And that's someone else's priority that they're communicating with me. That's not the bit that I need to be focusing on to achieve my goals. What's the chance that what appears in my inbox is the priority, which is on my goals list? Like, so I just don't look at it. And then I pick it up as a job for an hour at some point during the day.
Where does that focus and discipline come from?
Getting it wrong loads of times and not being as disciplined and focused. I've just listened to people. I mean, I mentioned Pete Wilkinson, Peter Knight. I go to Property Academy. I'm constantly trying to learn. I read books. I've got stashes and stashes of business books when I'm training. So I do triathlon. And when I'm training, I listen to books. So when I'm driving, I listen to books. I'm always trying to, fundamentally, none of us are a finished product. All of us can be better. And if you look at the vision of the Preston Baker Group, it's a better tomorrow. And that really talks to that belief that tomorrow can be better than today. You can be better tomorrow than you are today. And it's often referred to as the growth mindset. But I passionately believe in that. I hate people. So I don't. This is really awful. I hate people. I don't want to work with people who believe that they know it all, that we can't grow. Like, that is a killer for me. Like, that comes back to that attitude core value. That is like not interested in that.
I can agree more. Two types of people: a know it all or a learn it all person. So, and every day for me is a learning day. So I'm off to Aric for the second time next month with Luke. Hopefully meet loads of agents. Hopefully, fingers crossed, meet John McGrath and some other top agents there. Because 5 years ago, I bought something back here that I put in my training that I wish I knew as an agent. How to be a better negotiator. Really simple scripts, dialogues, whatever it is, that would have made a difference. Would have made so much a difference to get that extra percentage on my fee.
Totally.
So I think it makes a massive difference. So you talked a lot about books then.
Yeah.
I got introduced last week, so I was on the Home Stretch podcast, which comes out I think on Wednesday, with Ian Mackenzie, and he introduced me to a book by Richard Reed. If I Could Tell You One Thing. I don't know if you come across that book. Really good. So he's interviewed loads of people, and just asked them, what is one thing that you think that you have learnt throughout your whole career that would help other people? So what are the 3 books that you've read that you think would make a difference to people watching this that's helped you?
Amazing. So I guess one which I've read really recently is Alistair Campbell's Winners, which again is similar. And he talks about objective strategy tactics in that book. That for me is a really simple model, which again, Peter Knight introduced me to that particular book. The Sales Acceleration Formula by Mark Roberge. If you're looking to build a scalable sales business, he's the guy who went in and built the sales business for HubSpot. And he was from an engineering background, so he looked at things completely differently. It's got really good content around scorecards. So don't just go and hire someone. Work out exactly what the deliverables are from that role. Test whether those characteristics that you're looking for are the right ones, both through recruitment and induction. So again, it's a really great book on building business. And then probably the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is another absolute classic in terms of sort of personal development literature. And so I guess those 3 would probably be useful.
Fantastic. So you took a strategic decision to get in a CEO. Mm-hmm. What made you decide to go down that route?
Bandwidth, fundamentally. We've we've all got a limit to our bandwidth, whatever that is. And at the moment, we've got 10 different operational businesses within the group under 4 different brands. And, there's only so much you can have your head in the detail for each one of those businesses. And so ultimately, if you want to grow, you've got to infill with fantastic people around you. And I'm very lucky, I'm very blessed that I've been able to work with some fantastic people over the years. Sarah Jane, as we've mentioned already, works with Tom. So Tom Kirk has had a fantastic career with Purple Bricks. He was the guy who went out to California to go and set up a business there as a guy in his 20s. And, loads of people can have opinion on Purple Bricks now, whether rubbish, and, obviously they're charging nothing now. That's not exactly congruent with my value of premium. But let me tell you, Tom is a super smart bloke, and the fact that he was, elevated to that position at that age tells you everything you need to know. And then he went off to Boomin to be the chief product officer there, and now is coming to Preston Baker as the CEO. With a view to helping us grow our self-employed model, which obviously has got plenty of experience in. He's a much better marketeer than I am. It's definitely one of my big blind spots and my big weaknesses. And so, hopefully we can teach him a few things in terms of how we operate, and he's definitely teaching us some things, and that's how we grow. So yeah, it's a great pairing. Sarah Jane and Tom as a pair to run that business is a really effective combination between someone who's worked with me for 20 years and then someone who's got a new perspective and a new opinion about how we should be doing things, which is really interesting.
Okay, brilliant. So if people want to get hold of you, Ian, how do they do that?
LinkedIn's probably the best one for me. That's the channel which I tend to operate in the most, and therefore, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message or whatever, and I'm always happy to chat. I've also got a website, ianpreston.co.uk, and again, people can book a Zoom call, and I talk specifically on that website about self-employment, and if people are looking at changing their agency from an employed model to a self-employed model, we can actually help with that. And again, whilst I haven't got a huge amount of time to sort of explain how that works, that's definitely something I'll be chatting about in Leeds on the 2nd of May.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'm really grateful for your time, so thank you very much. I'm not going to see you in Leeds actually, but I know it will be an exceptional event because I know the ICG put on some great events. So good luck. Thanks very much for being a wonderful guest. Thank you everybody for watching and listening. Please like it, share it, get my message out there. Ian, thanks again for your time. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.